والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ونزلنا عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين صدق الله العظيم. Surah Al-Nahl of the Qur'an, Surah number 16, entitled The Bee. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God of Adam alayhi salam, the God of Abraham alayhi salam, the God of Moses alayhi salam, the God of Jesus, the God who Jesus worshipped alayhi salam, and the God of Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, and we sent down the book, namely the Qur'an, sent it down on thee, O Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, in order that this book might explain all things. And therefore that this book might explain the strange world in which we live today. The sun has never risen on a stranger world. That this book might explain the strangest thing of all in this strange world of ours. That strangest event in history, when Banu Israel, the Israelite people, who had been given the Holy Land, that the newspapers like to call Palestine, the Holy Land, and who had been expelled from that Holy Land by Allah Himself, and then had been prohibited from returning. They can come back as tourists, but you cannot come back to reclaim the Holy Land. For some 2,000 years, in a strangely scattered diaspora, suddenly, strangely, puzzlingly, mysteriously, mystifyingly, inexplicably, enigmatically, Banu Israel returned to the Holy Land to reclaim it. And a state of Israel appears on the map in the Holy Land. Only this book can explain it. And in this book there is guidance. Guidance does not come from any other source, only from this book. That explanation and that guidance have come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as an act of mercy and kindness, rahmah. And for those who have the good sense and the wisdom to go to the Qur'an and search for that explanation and guidance. And when they locate it, to accept it and to embrace it and to apply it. Bushra lahum, good news and glad tidings for such people. They will understand what others cannot. And they will succeed when others will not. We praise and we thank Allah, most kind, we glorify Him, and we pray to Him most humbly for His guidance and for His blessings and for His protection. As we attempt to address the subject, this awesomely important subject that all will benefit from listening to, Jerusalem in the Qur'an. Indeed, this has been the subject of my latest book, which I've just completed, Jerusalem in the Qur'an, Allahumma Jalla Jalaluhu. Jerusalem in the Qur'an, an Islamic view of the destiny of Jerusalem. This book has appeared in Penang about 2 weeks ago, and then in Hong Kong last week, and now Singapore. So we are using this opportunity, in fact, to launch this book in Singapore tonight. The subject begins in the Qur'an with a man named Ibrahim alayhi salam, the Prophet Abraham, who was thrown into the fire because he had the courage to proclaim the truth in the face of those who clung obstinately to falsehood. They threw him into the fire. I know an island where maybe he would have got a caning, but over there they threw him into the fire. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was so pleased with the servant of Allah, who was stood up so courageously for the truth, that Allah spoke to the fire and ordered the fire to be cool for him, to keep him safe. And then after that, the Qur'an declares, وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ وَلُوطًا إِلَى الْأَرْضِ الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And we delivered him to safety and took him and his nephew Lut alayhi salam to a land in which we had placed blessings for all of mankind. Allahumma rabbana. We took him and his nephew Lut alayhi salam, the Prophet Lot, to a land in which we had placed blessings for all of mankind. This is the introduction in the Qur'an to the Holy Land. If blessings were placed in this land for all of mankind, then it follows therefrom that it must be for mankind who are living a particular way of life. But then the Qur'an takes up the subject after Banu Israel have been brought to the Holy Land. Ibrahim alayhi salam is now living there. And Ibrahim alayhi salam is tested. Take the mother, take the baby, take them out there in the desert, leave them there. No food, no water, no shelter, no security. The modern world would say that this is something irrational. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, once he is aware that this is the word of Allah, he submits. Whether he understands or he does not. Whether he is comfortable with it or he is not. Once it is the word of Allah, he submits. And this is for all of us present who believe in the one God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him a second time. Sacrifice your son. The modern world would say this is an irrational act. But not Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ya bunayya, he says to his son, Inni ara fil manami anni asbahu. I have been commanded in a dream to sacrifice you. Fanzur madha tara. Now son, what is your response? I'm ready, are you? And so whenever he is tested, he passes the test. Whenever we are tested, do we pass the test? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then conferred upon him a status. إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. I hereby appoint you as the Imam of all of mankind, which includes, of course, the President of the United States. I hereby appoint you as the Imam of all of mankind. Now, I hope you would agree with me. If he is the Imam of all of mankind, then his religion is the religion of all of mankind. And therefore there can be only one true religion. And so we reject from this platform the claim that all religions are true. And it is a measure of tolerance that you accept that they are all true. We reject that because he is the Imam of all of mankind. And therefore there is only one true religion. And it is the religion of Abraham, alayhi salam. The Qur'an addresses Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and declares to him, ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ, and then we reveal to thee, O Muhammad, alayhi salatu wa salam, أَنِ اتَّبِعَ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. You must follow the religion of Abraham, alayhi salam. So now we know that Abraham, alayhi salam, is brought to the Holy Land and settled in the Holy Land. And there are blessings in this Holy Land for all of mankind, indicating for all of mankind who follow the religion of Abraham, the one true religion. The Quran then takes up the subject many years later, after the Israelite people had been taken to Egypt and had lived there for some few centuries and had been then enslaved in Egypt by the pharaohs. And we don't have the time to give you that story, that interesting story tonight. And then Allah raised a man and commissioned him to go and struggle to deliver the Israelite people out of slavery in Egypt. This is the Prophet Moses, alayhi salam. And he came with the truth, and Pharaoh rejected it. He came with signs from Allah. Pharaoh rejected them. He warned him. Pharaoh disregarded the warning. Pharaoh persisted in his arrogant disdain for the truth which had come with Moses, alayhi salam, and clung to his own theory that he was the truth, and that his authority is the supreme authority, and that his law is the highest law. Sounds familiar today, doesn't it? And then when the moment came for the final showdown, and Allah ordered Moses, alayhi salam, and the Israelite people to flee. And then Pharaoh pursued them. And now the Israelite people, to use that quaint English expression, when they're almost to the sea, they were between the devil and the deep blue sea. Pharaoh and his army behind, and the deep blue sea in front of them. And so the enemy must have been rubbing his hands. We've cornered them now. We're going to finish them now. And this upstart who dares to challenge us, we who are drunk with power, we're going to finish them now. But Allah plans his plans when they plan their plans. And when Moses, alayhi salam, reached the water, then Allah ordered him, strike the water with your rod. And then Allah parted the sea. If he could do that yesterday, guess what he can do tomorrow? وَإِذْ فَرَقْنَا بِكُمُ الْبَحْرِ. We parted for you the sea. فَأَنْجَيْنَاكُمْ. And we delivered you to safety. وَأَغْرَقْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ. And that arrogant upstart out there who dares to challenge Allah's sovereignty and Allah's supreme authority and Allah's law as the highest law, we destroyed it. وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. And it happened before your very eyes. And so now they are in Sinai, not the hospital in Manhattan. That's it. And then Moses goes up the mountain. Allah calls him up the mountain, alayhi salam. And there he receives the Torah. But it came down, the beginning, the 10 Commandments in stone tablets. And then he came back down, and of course you know the story about the golden calf and so on. And then Moses, alayhi salam, he now gives the command to Banu Israel. He says, and this is Surah Al-Ma'idah, يَا قَوْمِ ادْخُلُوا الْأَرْضَ الْمُقَدَّسَةَ الَّتِي كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. O my people, come on, let us fight, let us enter, let us take control of the Holy Land which Allah gave to you. If this is in the Qur'an, how come we don't hear them talking about it? How come the New York Times does not spread it on a full page? Sounds suspicious, doesn't it? There is a reason why they would not touch the Qur'an. Come on, let us enter and take control of the Holy Land which Allah gave to you. This is Surah Al-Ma'idah. But when they were given this command, and they came to learn that the people who lived in that land were a powerful people, Goliath, for example, they didn't have a stomach to fight. So they responded to their prophet and said to him, oh no, we're not going. You and your Lord, both of you go and fight, we must stay right here. It is difficult for us to conceive of a people behaving so shamelessly, so insultingly to the prophet who is their prophet and who is there in their midst, and to the Lord who has just parted the sea before their very eyes to deliver them to safety. It was insulting behavior. And the Qur'an teaches us that Allah responded. What did He do? He banned their entry into the Holy Land for how long? How long? 40 years. But wait a minute. The land had been given to them. But now they are banned from entering the Holy Land. So it seems as though the grant of the land was not unconditional. It seems as though the grant of the land was conditional. And when they violated the condition, He denied them the land. And so they are debarred for 40 years. And then Allah expresses His anger in the Qur'an. And He speaks to the heart of His prophet, Musa alayhi salam, Moses. And He says to him, فَلَا تَأْسَ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْفَاسِقِينَ. Do not grieve over these sinful, wicked people. I remember, must have been a rabbi, I don't know, from Los Angeles, who started engaging me in emails back and forth on this subject. And then I got an email. He says, don't you have any pity for us? So I replied with the Qur'an, where Allah Himself said to His Prophet, Do not grieve over a people who have acted in this manifestly sinful way. After the 40 years in the desert, and they all died in the desert, including Moses, alayhi salam. Then the next generation, after 40 years, they were allowed to enter into the Holy Land, and then they fought under Joshua, for example. And then under David, alayhi salam, they were able to consolidate themselves as a kingdom. And he, the prophet, is also a king. We have a prophet king. He is the founder of the state of Israel. It is an Islamic state because his religion is Islam, meaning a religion of submission to Allah as sovereign, a religion of submission to Allah's authority as supreme, a religion of submission to Allah's law as the highest law. This is Islam. The state of Israel under David alayhi salam expands, and it becomes a powerful state. And then under his son Sulaiman alayhi salam, the Prophet Solomon, its power is further consolidated. And he also builds the masjid, which they call the temple, Masjid al-Aqsa. And if you read the Qur'an about that encounter between Solomon alayhi salam and the Queen of Sheba, Bilqis from Yemen, you will see implicit in that exchange between the two, the recognition, this is very important now, listen, that Israel was the ruling state in the world. What is the definition of a ruling state? It is a state which can impose its will on any rival. Israel is the ruling state in the world because no one can stand up to Israel and defy Israel. This is therefore the golden age. A golden age in which we, as the followers of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we share in the joy of that golden age. It is as much our golden age as the golden age of Banu Israel. Because David alayhi salam is our prophet as well as their prophet. And Solomon alayhi salam is our prophet as well as their prophet. But after the death of Solomon alayhi salam, it is then that internal conflict led to civil war, and the state is now broken up into two. There is a northern state which is called Israel, and then there's a southern state which is called Judah. And in the internal rivalry between the rabbis of the north and the rabbis of the south, it is now that we have what the Qur'an has described in great detail, the rewriting of the word of Allah. The Torah which had come down from Allah is rewritten several times. An example is given in the Qur'an. Allah had prohibited usury, riba, the lending of money on interest, prohibited. And then revelation came down in which the Qur'an declared about the Jews and about the Christians. And remember, this lecture is based firmly on the Qur'an and on the word of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Firmly based on it. And of course, we must have the freedom wherever we are in the world. No one can deny us that freedom to teach the Qur'an and to teach the word of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And so the Qur'an declares, اتَّخَذُوا أَحْبَارَهُمْ وَرُهْبَانَهُمْ أَرْبَابًا مِنْ دُونِ illah. They took their priests and their rabbis as lords and gods beside Allah. وَالْمَسِيحَ ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ, and they did the same thing with the Messiah, the son of Mary. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا أَيَعْبُدُوا إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا, but they had not been commanded other than to worship one God. لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ, there is no God beside him. Subhanahu, glory be to him, عَمَّا يُشْرِكُونَ, far removed is he from this act of shirk, this act of blasphemy, of taking the priests and rabbis as lords and gods beside Allah. When this verse of the Qur'an was revealed, a man came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, but the Christians don't worship their priests, and the Jews don't worship their rabbis. How could Allah say so? The Prophet responded and said, did they not make halal what Allah made haram? Did they not legalize? Is it not legal now to lend money on interest? Huh? That is their shirk. Whoever legalizes what Allah has made prohibited has committed the one sin that Allah will never forgive, the act of shirk. If you legalize the lending of money and interest, for example, you have committed the sin called shirk. And then he said, did the people not accept it? That is their shirk. When we go to the Qur'an now informs us that they made halal the lending of money on interest, which Allah had made haram. He says that's in Surah An-Nisa. وَأَخْذِهِمُ الرِّبَى, they were taking riba, the interest on the money that they had lent. وَقَدْ نُهُوا عَنْهُ, even though it had been made prohibited for them. When we go to the Torah now, then we find in the Torah that someone had rewritten the word of Allah. And the Torah now declares that it is haram for an Israelite to lend money on interest to another Israelite. But it is halal, it is permissible for him to lend money on interest to those who are not Israelites. That didn't come from Allah. The Qur'an is telling us they wrote that with their own hands. Because of this rewriting of the Torah, and a lot of this information you will find in my book outside entitled The Religion of Abraham and the State of Israel, a view from the Qur'an. Because of this rewriting of the Torah, this awesome sin of shirk, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now expels them from the Holy Land. And he speaks of this at the beginning of Surah to Bani Israel, which is Surah number 17. وَقَضَيْنَا إِلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ فِي الْكِتَابِ لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْنِ وَلَتَعْلُنَّ عُلُوًّا كَبِيرًا. It was ordained that Banu Israel will commit this awesome fasad in the Holy Land on two occasions. This is the first one. Making halal what Allah had made haram and changing the word of Allah. And then he sent an army which worshipped the sun and the moon and the stars, the Babylonian army. And this army attacked that state of Israel, defeated it, destroyed the masjid, and took Banu Israel back to Babylon as slaves. But wait a minute, the land had been given to them. How come they are now expelled from the land? Allah did it. It seems as though the land was not given to them unconditionally. It seems very clear that the land was given to them conditionally, that there were conditions attached, and that they had violated those divine conditions. And when you when you violate the divine condition, even the President of the United States can't help you. Now let us see whether our theory or hypothesis is correct. Let us go to Surah Al-Anbiya, where Allah speaks and He says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. And we sent it down in the Psalms of David, alayhi salam. And that came after we had sent it down in the Zikr, which is the Torah, which came to Moses, alayhi salam. What did we send down? أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. That only those who are my servants, and therefore who follow the religion of the Imam who I pointed, the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam, which is Islam. Only those who are my servants and who are righteous in their conduct, only they will inherit the Holy Land. Some people have difficulties in understanding what is righteousness. So maybe this lecture has come as an opportune moment for us to teach them what is righteousness. It is not righteousness that you turn your faces to this way or to that way. That's not righteousness. Righteousness is in your conduct. And if you drive the people out of their homes and out of the land in which they lived for no just cause other than they are Muslims, you drive them out, and then you deny them for 50 long years. You deny them the right to return. That is not righteousness. Allah says in Surah Al-Hajj, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم بغير حق إلا أن يقولوا ربنا الله. That when the people are driven out of their homes and out of the land in which they live, for no just cause other than they are Muslims, Allah gives them permission to wage war. Allah gives them permission to wage war in order to respond to this oppression. And Allah says that when you wage war, Allah is sufficient to come to your help so that you will eventually be victorious. And so one of the conditions for inheritance of the Holy Land is that you must be a servant of Allah, and therefore following the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Number two, condition for inheritance of the Holy Land is that you must be righteous in your conduct. Not righteousness as defined by the Security Council of the UN. Righteousness as defined by the one who created all of mankind. Because they violated these conditions, they were thrown out of the Holy Land. But when we go to the Torah, we find that someone changed the word of Allah on this subject. And you'll find this quote in my book, The Religion of Abraham and the State of Israel. You'll also find it, of course, in this book. It is not because of righteousness that the Lord your God has given you this good land to inherit it. No. No. Not because of righteousness. Because you are a stiff-necked people. That is what is in the Torah. Implication of this statement is that whether you are righteous or you are not, the land is still yours. Whether you follow the religion of Abraham or you abandon it, the land is still yours. That is the implication. That is false. And so now they are in Babylon, you remember? weeping by the rivers of Babylon. And then Allah sent prophets to them, because they're still living as a homogeneous community. Among the prophets who were sent to them is, of course, the famous prophet Daniel, and then there is Isaiah. And these prophets communicate a divine promise. A divine promise. Listen carefully to this promise, because this is at the heart of Jerusalem in the Qur'an. The promise is still there in the Torah, you can read it, in the Jewish scriptures, that Allah was going to send a prophet who will be known as the Messiah, Al-Masih. And when the Messiah comes, he will rule the world from the throne of David, alayhi salam. And therefore, the state of Israel. And therefore, Jerusalem, which is the capital city. And so when the Messiah comes, the Messiah will rule the world from Jerusalem. And secondly, that when the Messiah rules the world from Jerusalem, his rule will be eternal. And therefore this will be the end of history. Not what Francis Fukuyama wrote. This is the end of history, when the Messiah comes. Now if you're in Babylon, and you get this promise from Allah, then the inescapable implications, you don't need a PhD from MIT to deduce this, is number one, in order for the Messiah to rule the world from Jerusalem, the first thing that the Messiah will do when he comes, or will have to do, would be number one, he'll have to liberate the Holy Land. Having liberated the Holy Land of Babylonian rule, the second thing that he'll have to do would be to bring the Israelite people back to the Holy Land. The third thing that he'll have to do would be to restore the state of Israel. The fourth thing he'll have to do would be to ensure that that state of Israel becomes once again the ruling state in the world, once again. And so the golden age will come back. And then the Messiah can rule the world from Jerusalem. And so while they're weeping by the rivers of Babylon, they're waiting for that day when the Holy Land will be liberated. And then there was an awesomely important change in international relations. The Persian Empire defeated Babylon. And the Persian king, then having liberated the Holy Land of Babylonian rule, then ordered that the Jews be allowed to return to the Holy Land. Not as tourists, but to reclaim it. And that the temple or the masjid be reconstructed. And so when Banu Israel returned to the Holy Land and the temple was rebuilt, there is expectancy in the air. The Messiah must be around the corner. Everybody is talking about it. Messiah must be around the corner. And then Allah raised a man. Oh, he was a very strange man. You can't find such a man in Singapore anymore. He used to wear clothing of animal skin. And he used to eat wild berries and honey and so on. And when he spoke from the heart. It wasn't just words. And the truth came out of him. Because in his heart there was light. Singapore, are you listening? In his heart there was light. You can't buy that light in the stock market. And this man began to proclaim the truth. And this man began to denounce them for their betrayal of the religion of Abraham, and called them back to the right path. But it was like the voice of one crying in the wilderness. The rabbis wouldn't listen to him. And then this man began to proclaim, the Messiah is coming. Or when he spoke those words, it was like electricity in the air. It spread like wildfire. The Messiah is coming. And then one day, when the Messiah, who is now a grown-up man, came back to the Holy Land, he came directly in front of that man. And then when that man saw him, he said, "Here he is. This is the man you've been waiting for. This is the Messiah, the son of Mary." Who was that man? John the Baptist. Yahya alayhi salam. I told you. Double it. Can't find people like that anymore. But when they speak from the heart. And who have light in their hearts. And when they call the people to come back to the truth and to the path of righteousness, it's like the voice of one crying in the wilderness. But when he said, "This is the man you've been waiting for, this is the Messiah," then Jesus, the son of Mary, responded and he says, "Yes, I am the Messiah." Then the Qur'an declares, فَآمَنَتْ طَائِفَةٌ مِّن بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. Part of the Israelite people accepted him as the Messiah. And they believed in him as the Messiah. Yes, they did. These are the poor. These are the ones who are humble and lowly in the spirit. These are the innocent of heart. وَكَفَرَتْ طَائِفَةٌ. But another part of Banu Israel rejected him. This is the elite. This is the administration. This is the establishment. This is the rabbis. They rejected him. Why did they reject him? Number one, وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا. He's a bastard. A bastard cannot be the Messiah. Why? His mother was the most famous girl in all the land. The most pious, the most virtuous, the most learned girl in all the land. Mary, who had lived in the temple itself, in the masjid, under the guardianship of the chief rabbi, Zachariah himself. From age 2 until she reached the age of puberty, she now has the monthly cycle, so she can no longer live in the masjid. When that child was in that masjid, I tell you, those rabbis must have had a lot of fun. They must have enjoyed having her in the masjid, particularly Zachariah alayhi salam. In those days, the masjid was built differently from today. The mihrab was not a little niche in the wall in the direction of the Kaaba. The mihrab was a separate room called the Holy of Holies. And only the chief rabbi could enter that room. And in that room were the sacred relics, like for example the Burak. So Mary was allowed into that room because Zachariah alayhi salam had guardianship over her. One day he entered into the mihrab and he found her with food. Mary, where did you get that food? So the little girl responded, I asked for it. He sent it to me. The old man must have taken off his hat and scratched his head. She asked. He sent it. I want a son. I should also ask. Huh? And then he went into the mihrab himself when he was all alone, and he asked. And then the angel appeared to him and said, your prayer has been answered. You will have a son, and his name is going to be John. Yahya alayhi salam. Now, the whole world knew about this. And so Mary is a very famous girl. One day she disappears. She had left the temple and she's now living with her parents. One day she disappears. And then after a few months she returns and she has a baby. And when they ask her, Mary, whose baby is this? She points to the baby. She knows. Oh yes, she knows. Because the angel told her this baby is going to be the Messiah. So she knows. But it is a part of the divine plan that she is not to speak. She points to the baby. They said, Mary, how can a baby speak? But the baby spoke. Qur'an declares the baby spoke. But when the baby spoke and proclaimed, I am the messenger of Allah, they said, هذا سحر مبين. It's pure magic. Pure magic. And so they denounced her. They declared of her that she had committed that vile deed of fornication, because she's not married. How can you have a baby? This happens when you see with only one eye. Had they been seeing with two eyes, not one, you know the second eye, the heart can see. Had they been seeing with two eyes, the external and the internal, they would have asked themselves a question. No one knew she was pregnant. No one knew. When the baby was born, well, why did she not get rid of it? Give it up for adoption. Put it in front of somebody's front door and run away. In New York, they put it in a garbage bin. Why did she not do that? She didn't do that. She came back with the baby. She didn't come in the night time, she came in the daytime. She didn't come through the back road, she came through the front road. She didn't come with the baby behind her, she came with the baby in front of her. This is not normal behavior. There is more to this than meets the eye. So let us hesitate, let us pause before we rush to judgment. Let us try to get to the bottom of this. But they didn't do that, because they were seeing with only one eye. Internally dead, internally blind. And so they rejected him. He cannot be the Messiah because he's a bastard. And then when the son of Mary began to denounce them, among other things, for their riba. I can't explain to you now, it would take too much time. It's not the lending of money on interest, it's another form of riba. The Americans have a beautiful expression for this form of riba. They call it a rip-off. Rip-off. In the exchange of money. He denounced them. He caught them in the temple itself, the masjid, engaged in riba. He cursed them. He turned over their tables. He threw them out of the masjid. He declared, you've taken the house of Allah and you've transformed it into a den of thieves. Today the modern world will say, he's a terrorist. That is their polluted thinking. They decided this man must die. They held a kangaroo court and they sentenced him to death. And then they forced the hand of a reluctant Roman government to crucify. And then they saw him die on the cross. Before their very eyes, they saw him die. When they saw him die on the cross, now it was as plain and as clear as daylight. He could not have been the Messiah. What? He's dead. But he didn't rule the world from Jerusalem with a rule which is eternal. And so now they boasted. This is in the Qur'an. and therefore I have the right to quote it. They boasted, we have killed him, the son of Mary, the Messiah. Of course this is sarcasm because they rejected him. The messenger of Allah. وَقَوْلِهِمْ إِنَّا قَتَلْنَا الْمَسِيحَ عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. This is the word of Allah in the Qur'an. So you can't sue me. We've killed him. Therefore he could not have been the Messiah. And so they're now waiting for the Messiah to come. Can't live in New York and not know that. What they did not know, and no one knew until the Qur'an was revealed, no one knew, was that no, they did not kill him. No, they did not crucify him. Allah made it appear unto them that this is what happened. What is the explanation of what happened on the cross? It is here in this book. I don't have the time to give it to you. And then Allah raised him unto himself. So he did not experience what is known as maut. When Allah takes the soul and does not return it, then that is called maut. Allah raised him without his experiencing maut. But Allah says in the Quran, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul must taste maut. Every soul must die. And therefore he has to return one day. Yes, the son of Mary is coming back. The most powerful voice in all of history to prophesy the return of Jesus, alayhi salam, is the voice of Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's given us detailed information concerning the event of the return, on the basis of which it is possible for me to make a calculated guess and to arrive at a figure that he is going to return perhaps within the next 50 years. But they didn't know that. So they're waiting for the Messiah to come. When he comes back, this is precisely what he's going to do. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, he's going to go to Jerusalem. Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem he will be hakimun adil, a ruler, ruling the world from Jerusalem with justice. And that would be a rule which would be eternal. And that would therefore be the end of history, in the sense that there's nothing to come after that to replace it. And so they are back. They're there in Jerusalem and they're waiting for the Messiah to come. Because this could not have been the Messiah, he's dead. The Quran now takes up this story from here. And what follows now, the second part of this lecture, is the more important part for you. Because in this second part of the lecture, you're getting an Islamic view of the destiny of Jerusalem that even the Security Council of the UN doesn't know about. First of all, Allah expels them from the Holy Land. The first time it was the Babylonian army, worshipping the sun and the moon and the stars. This time it's the Roman army, worshipping a goddess named Venus, and a god named Zeus, and a god named Mars. They are expelled from the Holy Land, but this expulsion differs from the previous one. This time Allah says in Surah Al-A'raf, وَقَطَّعْنَاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أُمَمٍ. We broke them up into bits and pieces and scattered them everywhere. And so Jews in Argentina and Jews in China and Jews in Egypt and Jews in Russia and the Jews in Yemen and Jews in Iraq and Jews in Iran and Jews in Morocco, this is divine punishment. But the rabbi says this was the divine wisdom, so that the truth could reach all of mankind. وَقَطْعَنَاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أُمَمٍ. We broke them up into bits and pieces and scattered them everywhere. The second thing that Allah says is that He is a God of mercy and compassion. And so even though they committed this vilest of all deeds in attempting to crucify the Messenger of Allah, and even though they had killed Zakaria alayhi salam in the masjid itself, and even though Yahya alayhi salam was beheaded, the killing of the prophets, yet he says, Asa Rabbukum an yarhamakum. It is still possible that your Lord can forgive you. It is still possible that your Lord can have mercy on you. There is only one door to mercy. What is it? At the end of Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us of the door to mercy for Banu Israel. He says, those who follow the messenger, who will be Al-Ummi, Nabi Al-Ummi, meaning the prophet who could not read and write, and also meaning the prophet who is not a Jew, is a Gentile. Those who follow that prophet, whom they will find mentioned in the Torah as well as in the Gospel. And therefore, the Qur'an is speaking to a Banu Israel after they had attempted to crucify Isa alayhi salam. Those who follow that prophet, who they will find mentioned in the Torah as well as in the Injil, the Gospel, who will command them what is just, and who will forbid them what is evil, who will allow them as lawful as halal, what is good and pure, and who will prohibit them as haram, that which is impure, who will release them from the heavy yokes and burdens which were upon them. It is those who believe in that prophet, namely the prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. It is those who believe in him. فَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِهِ وَعَزَّرُوهُ, and who honor him, وَنَصَرُوا, and who help him, وَاتَّبَعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ مَعَهُ, and who follow the light which came down with him, namely the Qur'an. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. These are the ones who will prosper. These are the ones who will earn Allah's mercy. And so the door to mercy is Muhammad alayhi salatu. And so when the Hijrah took place, and that prophet has now arrived in Medina, and the cream of Jewish scholarship is in Medina. And, Rabbi, what are you doing in Medina? An Arabian city. The rabbi would reply and say, well, our prophets told us that that prophet who is going to be coming will come to this city. That is why we're here. So when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ arrived in Medina after the Hijrah, the window of opportunity is now open for Banu Israel. if they accept him as the Prophet of Allah, Allah will forgive them. He makes it easy for them to accept him. He makes it easy for them to recognize that the same God who sent Moses alayhi salam is the same God who has now sent Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. He's made it easy for them because he performs his prayer in the direction of their Qibla. He turns towards Jerusalem, not Mecca, for prayer. That was difficult for an Arab. Secondly, he fasts with them on the days when they fasted and in accordance with their law of fasting. Do you know what is their law of fasting? You begin the fast at sunset. And you fast all through the night and all through the next day. No food, no water. And you couldn't go to your wives during the night. And that was really difficult for the Arabs. Really difficult. So he fasted with them on the days when they fasted and in accordance with their law of fasting. To make it easy for them to recognize that the same God who has sent down the Torah is the same God who is now sending down the Qur'an. But after 17 months in Medina, it has now become plain as daylight that they have rejected Muhammad alayhi salam, the Arab, as the Prophet of Allah. And they have rejected the Qur'an as divine revelation. It has become plain as daylight that they are now openly conspiring to destroy Islam. This is there in the books of Sirah. This is not fiction, this is history. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did something momentous in history. He changed the Qibla. Turn away from Jerusalem. Turn now to Mecca. So the door is closed. You had your chance, and you blew it. Turn now to Mecca. The window of opportunity is closed. And he declared, Tilka ummatun qad khalat. That religious community is now history, dismissed. And he declared of this one, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You are the best, which we have raised for the benefit of mankind, provided ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. You enjoy what is just and what is right, regardless of the price you have to pay. وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And you struggle against that which is false and unjust, regardless of the price you have to pay. If you do that, you are the best to have been raised for the benefit of mankind. And so now the door is closed for Banu Israel. They can no longer earn Allah's mercy. What punishment is now waiting for them? Allah speaks again in Surah Al-A'raf, and He declares, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. And your Lord has announced that He is now going to raise against them those who will inflict upon them until the last day the worst possible punishment. When the Quran speaks, you better listen. Who are those who are now going to be raised? Who will now continue in their struggle until the end of history, and who will inflict upon Banu Israel the worst possible punishment. Who are they? The Quran itself answers and tells us about the first. There are two of them. Two who will be raised. I now come to Surah Al-Anbiya, and there are two verses It is somewhere around 94, 95, 96. And I would urge you when you go back home to go find these two verses in Surah Al-Anbiya. Anbiya is number 21, Surah number 21. Allah speaks about a town, which He destroyed. And the people were expelled from that town. And then they were banned from returning. They could come back as tourists, that's okay, but they cannot come back to reclaim that town. It's theirs. Until and unless Gog and Magog are released. And when they are released, they spread out in every direction. Then these people will be brought back to reclaim that town. Let us quote the Arabic. وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ حَتَّى إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. Question 1. Which town is it? Question 2. Gog and Magog. The Prophet said, Gog or Ya'juj is an ummah of Banu Adam. So they're human beings. He said, Ma'juj is an ummah of Banu Adam. So Gog and Magog are human beings, just like you and I. However, Gog and Magog differ from you and I because of a hadith in Sahih Muslim, Hadith al-Qudsi, in which Allah says, I have created creatures of mine so powerful that none but I can destroy them. And so when they are released, Gog and Magog, with their indestructible power, they'll take control of the world. They will establish the world order of Gog and Magog. And since their power is indestructible, only Allah can destroy it, it would appear to Francis Fukuyama that this is the end of history. When Gog and Magog are released, then they will use their power, their control over the world is spread out in all directions. And now you will see the people of this town being brought back to the town to reclaim it. Which town is it? We have now come to a crucial part of our subject, Jerusalem in the Qur'an. Then you will see these people being brought back to their town. Not as tourists, to reclaim it. Which town is it? That is the question. Who should answer that question? Let us go to a man named Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Meaning, let us go to the hadith. Let us look for all the ahadith that there are on Gog and Magog. In 9 books of hadith, there are 58 ahadith. I've gone through all 58 of them. Let us look to see whether there is any town which is mentioned connected with Gog and Magog, which was destroyed by Allah. When we go through all the 58 ahadith, we find only one town mentioned, connected with Gog and Magog. And it was a town which was destroyed by Allah, and it was Jerusalem. Of course, the hadith does not have the word Jerusalem, it has the word Baitul Maqdis, the Arabic word. And so we have come to the conclusion that the town which is mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya is Jerusalem. And so what the Qur'an is saying, according to our interpretation, is that Allah destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed therefore the state of Israel, expelled the Jews from the Holy Land, and then banned their return. They can come back as tourists, yes, but they cannot come back to reclaim the Holy Land, unless and until Gog and Magog are released. And when they are released, they spread out in all directions, therefore they take control of the world, and therefore the world order will be the world order of Gog and Magog, and that world order will make possible the return of Banu Israel to the Holy Land. Who are Gog and Magog? Good question, eh? Good question. When we have the lecture on Surah Al-Kahf, that's tomorrow. Tomorrow at Darul Arqam at 5 o'clock, we will deal with this subject in greater detail. But for the purposes of today's lecture, in order to identify Gog and Magog, we must look for a people who are responsible for bringing the Jews back to the Holy Land. Who are they? A people who are obsessed with the Holy Land. Who are they? I want you to look at Europe. After the time of Prophet Muhammad, because Gog and Magog are released in the lifetime of the Prophet himself. The Prophet. 8 ahadith in Sahih Bukhari. 8. One event narrated in Sahih Bukhari 8 times. That Gog and Magog were released in the lifetime of the Prophet himself. So we have to look for a people after Muhammad ﷺ who are obsessed with the Holy Land. Europe became Christian. And that Europe is now obsessed with the Holy Land and engages in what even Singapore would know about, the Crusades. But they are the only Christians who want to liberate the Holy Land. None of the other Christians. Go do your homework, you'll see. Only European Christians want to liberate the Holy Land in the Crusades. And so we say to you, Singapore, that the Crusades were not an essentially Christian effort to liberate the Holy Land. No. The Crusades were an essentially European effort camouflaged in the clothes of Christianity to liberate the Holy Land. And then one Sunday morning, a strange thing happened. Some of the Europeans became Jews. I thought you had to be born as a Jew. You had to be from the seed of Abraham. But strange thing happened. And these Jews, they also have an obsession with the Holy Land. They establish a movement called the Zionist movement. And the mission of the Zionist movement is to liberate the Holy Land and bring the Jews back to the Holy Land. But the strangest thing of all is, these are the only Jews who want to do that. The other Jews, who are not European, they are not a part of this. And so I have something to suggest to you, that the Zionist movement is not an essentially Jewish movement. The Zionist movement is an essentially European movement camouflaged in the dress of Judaism. And so it is Europe all around who is obsessed with the Holy Land. And then another Sunday morning, it was the island of Britain, which is the ruling state in the world, which declares in 1917, I mean, there have been stranger things in life, but what very few stranger than this, that the God bless British government, because the churches are empty, they're being sold as bingo halls, the God bless British government announces to a very startled world in 1917 that the God bless British government is now going to work for the establishment of a Jewish national home in the Holy Land. So again, it is Europe, obsessed with the Holy Land. In 1919, it is a British army that defeats Turkey, the Ottoman army, and liberates the Holy Land for the Jews. And between 1919 and 1940, Britain opens the doors for the Jews to return. And 1948, Britain acts as a midwife for the baby to be born, the state of Israel. And so now it is as plain and as clear as daylight that Gog and Magog were released in Europe, and modern European civilization is the civilization of Gog and Magog. Those who control the world today, in whose hands is power, belong to the family of Gog and Magog. But Allah says, I have raised them that they may inflict upon Banu Israel until the last day the worst possible punishment. And so Gog and Magog are actually taking Banu Israel for a ride. And it's the last ride on which they'll ever go. Who else will Allah raise? Because the verse of the Qur'an says Allah is going to raise against them those who will inflict upon them until the last day the worst possible punishment. Who else will Allah raise? We now turn to the Prophet Muhammad to answer that question. And this is a very interesting part of the lecture, so sit down and relax. The Prophet said that Allah created a being and endowed that being with awesome power, awesome versatility, and what I describe as a PhD in deception. And Allah will release that being into the world. And when that being is released into the world, he will be known as Al-Masih al-Dajjal. Dajjal, the false Messiah. The Christians refer to him as the Antichrist. We will not use that terminology. We'll use a more appropriate terminology, namely the false Messiah. Dajjal will have as his mission that he would have to impersonate the true Messiah. And in the process of impersonating the true Messiah, he would deceive the Jews. But he's also going to attack all of mankind, including Singapore. When Dajjal is released, and when we can see him, Dajjal, the false Messiah, will appear as a human being, as a Jew. He would be a young man. He would be powerfully built. He would have curly hair, and I'm not going to say anything about his eyes. If Dajjal is to impersonate the Messiah, it follows therefrom, listen carefully, in order for him to convince Banu Israel that he is indeed the Messiah, the first thing that he'll have to do would be to liberate the Holy Land for the Jews. Then they'll be convinced. The second thing that he'll have to do would be to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land. Then they'll be convinced. The third thing that he'll have to do would be to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land. Then they'll be convinced. Golden age is coming back. The fourth thing that he'll have to do would be to cause that state of Israel to become the ruling state in the world, and someone should tell this to George Bush. Because he doesn't know anything about it. It would do the President of the United States of America a lot of good if he could sit down and listen to this lecture. And then when the state of Israel has become the ruling state in the world, then Dajjal must rule the world from Jerusalem in what would appear to be a rule which is eternal, and therefore the end of history. When Dajjal has done that, then he can rub his hands and he can say, mission accomplished. The Prophet ﷺ, after the change in Qibla, suspected that the Jewish boy in Medina was Dajjal. He took Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu with him. You know Umar? You know Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu? Huh? About whom he said, if there were to have been a prophet after me, it would have been him. But there is no prophet after me. So he took Umar with him to go and question this Jewish boy, whose name was Ibn Sayyad. And having questioned him, the boy was rather impertinent in his answers. So Umar was annoyed. He said, "O Messenger of Allah, give me permission, I'll cut off his head." Today, of course, they see the terrorist. That's their polluted thinking. The Prophet said, "No, Umar. If he is Dajjal, you can't kill him. And if he is not Dajjal, then it would be sinful to kill him." Implicit, therefore, in that answer is that the possibility exists that he could have been Dajjal, and therefore the Dajjal was already released. Dajjal is already released. In the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, after the change in Qibla. So the door is closed now for Banu Israel to earn mercy. Now we come to perhaps the most important hadith of the evening. When we address the subject of Dajjal, inshallah, on Wednesday night at Masjid Abdul Halim Siddiqui, we'll deal with the subject in greater detail. But listen to this part of the subject now. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when Dajjal is released, he will live on earth for 40 days. One day like a year, one day like a month, one day like a week, and the rest of his days like your days. This hadith is in Sahih Muslim. Okay. And so at the end of his life on earth, his day will be like our day. And so he will be in our dimension of time. So we'll be able to see him, a Jew, a young man, powerfully built with curly hair and so on. But where would he be on earth at that time? Answer, of course it has to be Jerusalem, ruling the world as the head of the state of Israel, ruling the world from Jerusalem. Where would he be when he's released on earth? In a day which is like a year. Question 1. Question 2. Where would he be when his day is like a month? Question 3. Where would he be when his day is like a week? I tell you, not even the University of Singapore could answer that question. Do we have answers to these questions? Yes, praise be to Allah, who sent Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, who has given us the answer to question 1. And that answer helps us to answer question 2, and that helps us to answer question 3. So now sit down and relax. Muhammad narrated an event. And then the Prophet told the people, sit down in the masjid, I have something to say to you. Tamim al-Dari came to me and told me something about Dajjal which confirms what I've been saying to you. So this is true. And then the rest of it comes out of the lips of the Prophet himself. Tamim al-Dari got on board a ship with some 40 of his companions. And then a storm came and blew the ship for a whole month. Singapore, have you studied geography? If you're on the western coast of Arabia, western coast, and you get on board a ship, you have to be either in the Red Sea or the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, somebody in Cape Town told me Atlantic Ocean, but forget that. In school. Either the Red Sea or the Mediterranean Sea. But if you're on the Red Sea and a storm comes and blows your ship, will you take a whole month before you reach land? No, not the Red Sea. So we eliminated the Red Sea because the storm came and blew the ship for a whole month before they reached land. So you have to go all the way across the Mediterranean Sea. When they reached land, it was an island. And when they got on shore, they were confronted by this very hairy beast or creature. So much hair on the body of this creature, you couldn't tell which side was head and which side was tail. Like sometimes in Lower Manhattan, you can't tell who is a man and who is a woman. At least some Singaporeans are smiling. But there's some, I can't get them to smile, I don't know what's wrong. And then the beast spoke, and the beast said, I am Dajjal. No, sorry. I am Jassas. Jassas means spy. Spy. So you get a good job in the internet now. I'm spy. So this is an island which has a PhD in spying, and espionage, and intelligence work, James Bond kind of stuff. And then Jassas said to Tamim ud-Dari, there is someone waiting to see you out there pointing to a monastery. So Christianized. When they went to the monastery, they met this young man, powerfully built with curly hair. But he was in chains. His hands are chained to his neck, and his feet are chained together. And this man questions them. Among the things he asks them, you remember I told you, probably another 50 years? Remember? This hadith helps us to understand. He said, is there any water left in the Sea of Galilee? The Sea of Galilee in the Holy Land is the biggest source of drinking water for the entire area. So they said, yes, plenty of water. He said, I don't think it's going to last for long. Strange. Because tomorrow at Darul come at 5 o'clock, we find a hadith of Sahih Muslim that when Gog and Magog are released, the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee and start to drink the water. And by the time the last of them pass, they'll say there used to be water here. When the last of them pass will be a time when the Son of Mary comes back. Guess how much water there is in the Sea of Galilee now. I'll give you the answer tomorrow. Inshallah. So he asked, is there any water left in the Sea of Galilee? They said, yes, plenty. He said, I don't think it's going to last so long. Then he says, I am Dajjal. And when I'm released, I'm going to enter every town and every city, but he didn't mention Kampung. He didn't mention Kampung. I'm going to enter every town and every city. But not Makkah and Medina, because the angels are going to protect Makkah and Medina. So now we know that when Dajjal is released, he's going to be released on this island. And it is from this island that he has to launch his mission in a day which is like a year. And nobody knows how long is a day which is like a year. And from this island he has to launch his mission to impersonate the Messiah. And therefore to liberate the Holy Land, to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land, to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land, etc. Which island is it? Which island is it? Do I have the right to ask that question? Now this is my answer. My name is Imran Hosein. So you can differ with me. But if you differ with me, you're not allowed to leave the hall. Now, you will have to tell me which is the right answer, if my answer is the wrong answer. And you'll also have to give me the evidence which supports you. My answer. In 1917, it is the island of Britain, which having become the ruling state in the world, ruling the world with military power, and ruling the money of the world through the Bank of England, because they got us, meanwhile the scholars of Islam were eating halwa. They took away the real money, which has intrinsic value, and they replaced it with paper money, which they could manipulate. You don't have to have a PhD from Harvard to understand this, which you can manipulate the paper value of the paper money. And when the paper money collapses, as they did in Indonesia, you can rip them off. And so half of the country now below the poverty line. You have sucked the blood of the people. Shame on you. This is what happens when paper money replaces real money. So Britain now rules the world in terms of military power. Britain controls the money of the world through the Bank of England, because now you're using paper money. In 1917, this Britain issues the Balfour Declaration that I spoke of earlier. In 1919, a British army defeats the Turkish army and liberates the Holy Land for the Jews. From 1919 to 1948, Britain allows the Jews to return to the Holy Land that the Ottoman Empire had not allowed. You could come out as a tourist, but you can't come back to reclaim the Holy Land. No. Not while the Ottoman Empire was there. And in 1948, the island of Britain acts as the midwife for the baby to be born, the state of Israel. And so my answer is that the island is Britain. If you differ with me, you must tell me which is the right answer. And you must give me the evidence which supports you. But you have the freedom to differ with me, because this is my opinion. And so I answer and declare that when the false Messiah is in a day which is like a year, it is from Britain that he attacks. Britain is the headquarters of Dajjal. But one day, Britain is no longer the ruling state in the world. The First World War comes around, and it is launched by way of a terrorist attack which bears the same fingerprints of September the 11th, incidentally. And this terrorist attack launches the First World War. And Britain is forced into the war by those who planned the attack. And within 2 years of the launching of the First World War, Britain is about to surrender. Germany has encircled Britain with her submarines. Britain is no longer the ruling state in the world. And then, in a chapter of history which is still to be written, but we know what happened. Britain is offered a deal. A deal. If you will promise us the Holy Land, we will bring the United States into the war. So the Zionist movement succeeds in getting the Balfour Declaration. The United States enters into the war, and the tide of the war turns, and Germany is defeated. But the United States is now the new ruling state in the world. Not only does the United States of America have their military power, but also rules the money of the world. Because the sterling pound is now replaced by the US dollar. The Bank of England is now replaced by the World Bank and the IMF. And London is no longer the financial capital of the world, it is now Washington. If there was any doubt concerning the United States as a new ruling state in the world, look at the Second World War. It is an American general, a man named Dwight Eisenhower, who is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the Allied forces, etc. I don't want to take your time too much because I believe you are in agreement with me. The United States has taken over from Britain as the new ruling state in the world. But when the United States takes over from Britain, there is a strange, a puzzling, a baffling, a mysterious, a mystifying, enigmatic relationship between the United States and the State of Israel which defies rationality. The United States supports Israel, right or wrong. The United States provides massive financial aid, economic aid, military aid, transfer of military technology, and so on and so on and so on. And so the baby grows up into a very strong, powerful man now. Israel is now a nuclear power and a thermonuclear power on par with the nuclear powers of the world. Thanks to the United States. Some of it went through the front door, some went through the back door. And so we say that when the false Messiah is in a day which is like a month, it is from the United States of America that he is launching his attack. This is the headquarters. The question is, will a day which is like a month last forever? Will the United States of America be the ruling state in the world forever? No. Well then, when the United States is no longer the ruling state, who will replace it? The answer, which only those who follow Muhammad ﷺ can give, is that the state of Israel will replace the United States of America as the ruling state in the world. And that's coming. That is around the corner. My assessment is that September 11 was meant to function as a catalyst to facilitate this movement. If the President of the United States of America had been killed and thank Allah that he was not killed, he had been killed, then this movement would have been accelerated. In order for Israel to become the ruling state in the world, a big war has to be launched. And the territory of the state of Israel has to dramatically expand, and that is around the corner. Because the Torah says, with the Zionist movement considered to be the title lead of the state of Israel, the Torah says that the territory of the state of Israel extends from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. Okay. When Israel launches that big war, and it witnesses a dramatic expansion of the territory of the state of Israel, and of course you can now get rid of the Palestinians, send them to Iraq, send them any way you want. Export them. And the United States economy collapses because of an attack on the US dollar. At this time, Israel now becomes the ruling state in the world. My assessment, I think that is coming within the next 5 years or so. When Israel becomes the ruling state in the world, then Dajjal, the false Messiah, will now be in a day which is like a week. And so Israel is going to rule the world for a much shorter period of time than the United States, and a much shorter period of time than Britain ruled the world. It is at this time that real oppression of the followers of Muhammad ﷺ will really take place. What we are now experiencing is an introduction to oppression. The Prophet said, ﷺ, he said that a man would pass by a grave and roll over the grave, and would say, I wish I were in the grave rather than the dead man. Not because of religious reasons, but because of relentless oppression. When a day which is like a week comes to an end, which will be perhaps, how much, 25, 30 years, then the false Messiah will now enter into a day which is like our day. So now he'll be in our dimension of time. So now we will see him as the ruler of the state of Israel, ruling the world from Jerusalem. It is at this time that the water in the Sea of Galilee would have dried up. How low is the water level now? Tomorrow I'll tell you, inshallah. The Prophet said, Allah's blessings be upon him, that a Muslim ruler will die. Couldn't have been Hafiz al-Assad because he's already dead. And when this Muslim ruler dies, there will be dissension concerning succession. And then a man will come out of Medina and hurry to Mecca. And the people of Mecca would come out to him to urge him and force him to accept the pledge of allegiance or the bay'ah. He said, this man will have my name and his father's name will be my father's name. He will have a broad forehead and a large nose, and he'll be known as Al-Mahdi, Imam al-Mahdi. In order for the people of Makkah to come out to him, he has to be a well-known person. Makkah has always been a Sunni city. Makkah has never been a Shia city. And so it is impossible for us to hold the view that the Mahdi, when he comes to Makkah, would be a Shia personality. Makkah would not accept a Shia as their Amir or Imam or Khalifa. When the Mahdi accepts the bay'ah, then he's attacked by an army from Sham, Syria. The Prophet said that when an army crosses Medina going down south to Mecca, the earth is going to open and swallow that army. This is one of the 10 major signs of the last day. When that happens, then you can no longer deny this is the Mahdi. We will now wait to see what Iran does. Those who accept him as the Mahdi are our brothers. Those who do not are not our brothers. Then he's going to be attacked by an army from Arabia, said the Prophet ﷺ. An army of the Quraysh of the Kalb. And army is of course under the control of government. He will defeat that army. And when he defeats that army, then the Arabian Peninsula would have been liberated and Darul Islam would have been restored. When Darul Islam is restored, it means that Allah's sovereignty is now recognized. Allah's authority is recognized as the supreme authority, not the Charter of the United Nations Organization. Allah's law is now recognized as the supreme law, not resolutions of the Security Council. And so Darul Islam has been restored. Islam is now re-emerging as a potent force in the world. That's around the corner. It's coming. This constitutes the most potent of all threats to the state of Israel. When the Islamic revolution comes to Arabia, the heartland of Islam. And so Dajjal has to do something. And so he attacks the Mahdi. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, he's not going to be using tanks for his attack. The Prophet said he's going to come from the east. He pointed to his fingers to the east 20 times. He's going to attack from the east. How will he attack? Dajjal is going to ride on a donkey. The donkey will travel as fast as the clouds. The donkey will have his ears stretched out wide. I traveled on that donkey to go to Hong Kong last week. So, you're talking about fighter aircraft, big aerial warfare. Dajjal is strong in the air. He has command of the skies. He has his fighter aircraft. He has his helicopter gunships and so on. But when Dajjal attacks, the angels will defend Mecca and Medina, and Sahih Muslim says that the attack will be diverted to Damascus. And then the Prophet ﷺ has described in some detail what is now going to happen. It is reminiscent of what happened over there by the Red Sea. When Moses alayhi salam and Banu Israel, it would seem were cornered. No way out. They were between the devil and the deep blue sea, remember? And at the last moment Allah intervened. Similarly, history repeats itself one more time. When the whole world believes that Islam is a spent force, when the whole world believes that the moment has come and finally and at last to finish with Islam, it is at this moment. Dajjal is outside the masjid, says the Prophet ﷺ, followed by 70,000 Jews from Isfahan, which means that the state of Israel, power in the state of Israel will move from the European Jews to the Jews of the Arab world. That transfer of power has already started. Dajjal is outside, followed by 70,000 Jews from Isfahan wearing the Jewish shorts. And the Imam is inside the masjid, and the masjid is barricaded because Israel has invaded Syria. It's at this time when the Salat is about to take place, this last moment that Allah intervenes. And the true Messiah comes down with his hands resting on the wings of two angels. And Jesus comes down in the masjid. And when the Imam sees the son of Mary, he will say what John the Baptist said before. History repeats itself. He will say, here he is, this is the son of Mary. Positive identification. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, heard about it? He said, I am the fulfillment of that prophecy about the return of the true Messiah. But he had a big problem. His problem is that the Messiah who is coming is the son of Mary, and he happened to be the son of a Punjabi woman. The Salat, the prayer. The son of Mary will say, no, the people have appointed you as the Imam, you lead. After the prayer of the Salat is finished, in which the son of Mary will worship and pray and bow down, prostrate before the God of Abraham, the one God. He will worship God. Don't worship him. When the Salat is over, he will then say, open the gates. All of this is in the hadith of Sahih Muslim. When he comes out, the false Messiah will see the true Messiah. And the false Messiah will become so scared that the Prophet used an Arab expression. He says he's going to melt like salt melts in water. And then the false Messiah will flee. In which direction? Baghdad? No, the state of Israel. And the true Messiah pursues him and overtakes him in a place called Lud. And Lud is the headquarters of the Israeli Air Force. So it's aerial warfare. And the true Messiah now kills the false Messiah. That's coming around the corner. Within the next 50 years, inshallah, I believe. Of course I can be wrong, but this is my plausible guesswork. When the true Messiah kills the false Messiah, then an essential component of the support of the state of Israel and of the world order that controls the world today would have been demolished. After this comes the destruction of Gog and Magog, which is tomorrow's lecture. So I need not speak on it today. When Gog and Magog are destroyed, and Dajjal, the false Messiah, had been killed, then the very foundations of the world order which controls the world today will have been demolished. My suspicion is that the world of modern technology will also come to a halt at that time. At this time, said the Prophet ﷺ, I'm going to quote two ahadith now, but do please remember, these words are not coming from me. They are not my words. These are the words of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And I have the right to quote the Prophet in order for me to teach this subject. He said, this is the first hadith I'm quoting, which is not in Bukhari and not in Muslim. This hadith is in Tirmidhi, the Sunan of Tirmidhi. He said, when you see the black flags coming from the direction of Khorasan, go and join that army, even if you have to crawl over ice. Those are his words. Where is Khorasan? The illustrious Pakistani scholar Dr. Israr Ahmad has done the research and has explained to us that Khorasan at the time of the Prophet ﷺ is that large geographical territory of which Afghanistan is the heart. Includes the northwest of Pakistan and the northeast of Iran and territory north of Afghanistan. But what is quite symbolically important about the heart of that territory is that Britain tried to colonize it, and Britain failed when Britain was the ruling state in the world. And then the Soviet Union tried to colonize it when the Soviet Union was a superpower, and the Soviet Union failed. And guess who is trying to colonize it now? When you see that army coming from Khorasan, go and join that army. Even if you have to crawl over ice. And so, Singapore, I have a gentle word of guidance to share with you. And I'm entitled to do that because I'm in the status of a teacher, teaching Islam around the world, not just Singapore. This is my word of guidance. When you look for those who are your guides, your teachers, the men whose opinion you cherish, to guide you on the right path, to teach you your religion, ask yourself, is this the kind of man who would crawl over ice to go and join that army which will come from Khorasan? If he is not, then go look and search for such a man. Go and join that army, said the Prophet ﷺ. Because no one will be able to stop that army until it reaches Jerusalem. Those are his words. And so the destiny of Jerusalem, as it emerges from the lips of Muhammad ﷺ, whether our enemies accept it or don't, whether they are comfortable with it or they are not, is irrelevant. Our leader has said, and we believe that he has spoken the truth, that it is the destiny of Jerusalem that an Islamic army, an armed Islamic resistance, will liberate the Holy Land. There is no peace talks which will resolve the problem When Muhammad ﷺ has spoken that jihad is already in progress, you don't need anyone to declare jihad. The jihad is already in progress, and what is more, no one can stop it. If you do not have in your heart the longing and desire to participate in that jihad in whatever way you can, then there's a big question mark concerning your faith. When that army comes from Jerusalem, from Khorasan, then the Prophet spoke, and this is the last hadith I'm going to be quoting, or maybe the second to last. He said, now, this hadith is in Sahih Bukhari. It is also in Sahih Muslim. It is therefore muttafaqun alayh. It is the strongest, most authentic possible statement of Muhammad alayhi salatu. These are his words. Do not say that they are mine. They are his words. He said, لَتُقَاتِلُنَّ الْيَهُودِ. You will most surely fight the Jews. That's already happened. وَلَتَقْتُلُنَّهُمْ. And you will most certainly kill them, meaning you will be victorious. حَتَّى يَقُولُ الْحَجَرُ. At that time, the stones will speak. Ya Muslim, O Muslim, هذا يهودي ورائي. There's a Jew hiding behind me. فَتَعَالَى فَقْتُلْ. So come and kill him. This will result in the liberation of the Holy Land and the destruction of the state of Israel. And then the Islamic state of Israel, the one of Dawood alayhi salam and Sulaiman alayhi salam, that will now replace it in the Holy Land. And so Islam will become the ruling state in the world. And the true Messiah will now rule the world from Jerusalem, with a rule which will be eternal, meaning there is nothing to replace it. This is the end of history. The Imam al-Mahdi will live for only 7 years, and then he'll die. Said the Prophet Muhammad. I don't have this information, I'm giving you what the Prophet said. But Isa alayhi salam will live for 40 years. The Prophet said that Jesus alayhi salam will get married. The Pope doesn't know that. I hope he'll marry a Palestinian girl. Yes. And he will have children. Yes. And then he will die. Yes. So don't worship him, because he's going to die. Worship the God who never dies. And then said the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he's going to be buried next to me. Next to me in Medina. This would be the end of the story of Jerusalem in the Qur'an. What follows after this is the last part of the last stage of history. We don't know how long it will last. Nobody knows, only Allah knows. But at the end of that, Allah is going to bring the world to an end. But at this time, make up your mind for this hadith now. Prepare yourself for it. There will be such a collapse of morals, sexual morals of the world, and you can see it coming now. That people will be committing sexual intercourse in public like donkeys. And the best man of that age will be one who would pass by and see two people having sex in public, and he would say to the man, can't you at least take her behind the wall? That is the tomorrow that is coming. And then Allah will bring the world to an end. And then will come the day of judgment, when we stand before Allah. And then all that is spoken in the Qur'an, and which we have quoted in this book, all of these things will now be seen with the eyes which can no longer be denied. This has been Jerusalem in the Qur'an, and I've taken exactly 2 hours. Before I end, let me commend that you read this book, because the entire lecture is in here. I could not give you the whole lecture. And one final word, my teacher who trained me, Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, was also trained by Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui, rahimahullah. Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiqui visited Singapore something like 26 times in the 1920s and 1930s. And I heard the story of how this masjid was established. And Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, who was my teacher, he lived in Singapore in 1935 for 1 year. He wrote this book, which is now available outside, The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society. If we are to establish Islam today, then this, I suggest to you, is the manual, the handbook, the guide that we should follow, in order that the Qur'an may be the means through which we can establish Islam today. I hope and pray that you would support Masjid Abdul Alim Siddiqui in the effort to try to raise the funds needed to reconstruct the masjid. I will also put my hand in my pocket to give whatever I can, and I hope that you will also do the same. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين.